One of the questioners repeats a point from Dr. Turek's opening statement that apparently he or she feels you did not address, Mr. Hitchens, about the irreducible complexity of DNA. And is it possible for such structures to have formed by chance?
Well, I have two responses to that. One is, what would she have said before she knew about DNA?
What does that have to do with anything?
They
existed prior to anyone knowing about them.
Yes, that's right.
Gravity existed before we knew about it,
That's
Christopher.
correct.
You need an explanation
That's
for
correct,
that.
and Christianity thought it could explain everything, and then it found
No, not
more
everything.
things. Wait, this is very simple, same as your point about molecules, that I said that these arguments predate Epicurus, Lucretius, and the atomic theory. Christianity used to say it can explain everything. All you need to know is there's an all-powerful, all-loving, all-intervening, all-knowing, omniscient God. Okay, well then wait, wouldn't DNA explain more? Well that only shows that God's even cleverer than we thought. So it's an infinitely expanding tautology. There are some Christians who accept, in fact it was actually a Catholic physicist at the University of Louvain in Belgium who first came up with the idea of what we now call the Big Bang. And most popes, not all, but most popes have accepted it. Some have thought of it as a challenge to Christianity. The Pope Leo, who he went to, I can't remember the scientist's name for a second, maybe someone here can help me. He went to the Pope and said, look, looks like this is how things started. And the Pope said, if you like, I'll make it a dogma that every Catholic has to believe it. He said, that would be slightly missing the point, Your Holiness.
Christopher, what does this have to do with the origin of DNA?
Well, because it is true to say that religion, as Stephen Jay Gould said, that religion and science belong to non-overlapping magisteria. I think these magisteria are in many ways incompatible and in many ways irreconcilable, but it is no more true to say that the existence of the complexity of DNA shows that God was more ingenious than we thought, than it is to say that it necessarily shows by its self-revealing ingenuity that we don't need the hypothesis of God. Both of these positions would be, in my opinion, somewhat reductionist, though I would have to say that I think the second one is more persuasive and more elegant.
No, Gould is wrong.
Will that do?
Christians or religious people, religion is trying to find out how the universe began, and so is science. They're not.
No, religion says it does know, excuse me.
No, it's trying to find.
Religion is not a process of scientific inquiry. Religion is an affirmation of faith. It says it already knows.
I am a religious person, Christopher, and I am using evidence to try and point out that the universe exploded into being out of nothing.
And you have scientific evidence for the view that an intervention will occur to prevent the implosion and
No, forget that. Let's start at the beginning.
I can't forget it.
Let's start at the beginning. That's for debate two.
It's the only thing you've said all evening that I'm going to remember.
Gentlemen.
That's for debate two.
No. I mean, don't say, look, do yourself and your faith the honor of saying it's faith. Don't say it's science-based.
The argument would be...
You won't get away with it.
Look, the argument would be, Christopher, is that if the universe exploded into being out of nothing, then miracles are possible because the greatest miracle of all has already occurred. The question is, have miracles occurred in the first century? That requires another debate whereby we have to look at the historical evidence and see. And if it is true that that Jesus really did come and say and do the things that the New Testament writer said he did, then whatever he teaches is true, because if he rose from the dead, he was God. If he taught that there will be an intervention, then there will be. That's the argument. I don't have time to support it.
Very good. Now, a sentence or two from David Hume on miracles would clear all this up.
You'll need to...
Oh dear.
It's fallen off, sorry.
That's one up. Right. A sentence or two from David Hume would correct what you said. A miracle is defined not as a part of the natural order, but as a suspension of the natural order.
No, an intervention.
You can't say of the Big Bang, which is the foundation of the natural order, that it's a suspension of what it starts. You may not do that. However, if you meet someone in the street who you yesterday saw executed, you can say either that an extraordinary miracle has occurred or that you are under a very grave misapprehension. And David Hume's logic on this, I think, is quite irrefutable. He says, what is more likely, that the laws of nature have been suspended in your favor and in a way that you approve, or that you've made a mistake? And in each case you must, and especially if you didn't see it yourself and you're hearing it from someone who says that they did. I would go further and say the following. I'll grant you that it would be possible to track the pregnancy of the woman Mary, who's mentioned about 3 times in the Bible, and to show that there was no male intervention in her life at all. But yet she delivered herself of a healthy baby boy. I don't say that's impossible. Parthenogenesis is not completely unthinkable, but it does not prove that his paternity is divine. And it wouldn't prove that any of his moral teachings were thereby correct. Nor, if I was to see him executed one day and see him walking the streets the next, would that show that his father was God, or his mother was a virgin, or that his teachings were true, especially given the commonplace nature of resurrection at that time and place. After all, Lazarus was raised, never said a word about it. The daughter of Jairus was raised, didn't say a thing about what she'd been through. And the Gospels tell us that at the time of the crucifixion, all the graves in Jerusalem opened, and their occupants wandered around the streets to greet. So that it seems the resurrection was something of a banality at the time. Not all of those people clearly were divinely conceived. So I'll give you all the miracles, and you'll still be left exactly where you are now, holding an empty sack.
No, Christopher, you have to look at each miracle in light of the evidence and the context. Hume was wrong because his premise that was wrong was the one that said the evidence for the regular is always greater than that for the rare. It's not. From Hume's own worldview, if Hume was here today, he wouldn't even believe in the Big Bang because it only happened once. It's not a regular event, it happened once. He wouldn't believe in the spontaneous generation of life, which is what a materialist must believe because it only happened once. He wouldn't believe in his own birth because it only happened once. In fact, he wouldn't be able to believe in the whole history of our solar system because it only happened once. You don't need regular events to know whether or not something happened. Singular events happen all the time. This debate will never happen again, yet you're here to witness it.
I'm just going to repose my trust in the audience here. There's an obvious difference between a singularity and a miracle. And I think it would be embarrassing to try and explain it. It would be patronizing to try.